Let me just make sure this thing is loading. What is going on, Charlotte Short-Term Rental Insiders? We are live. All right. Today we have Riley, as usual. How you doing, Riley?
I'm good. I'm excited. This is a detailed topic, so I'm ready to jump in and explain some of this stuff. I'm sure it's going to bring a lot of value out there, so this is a good one.
Yeah, this is, probably the most common question asked: how to price your short-term rental. And we're diving into it. This one is going to be a little bit longer, maybe 15, 20 minutes. So make sure you stay around at the end. We are actually going to show you our pricing tool, all of our rules to help you out. We're here to give as much value as possible, and make sure we're going to do that last, just because everything kind of leads up to that point. Everybody's really jumping to like, what's my average daily rate? Like, what kind of occupancy? Like, how do I price this thing? But there are a lot of really important factors that go into that. Comps, what your other properties are doing, what your goals are in your short-term rental business. That all kind of leads up to that question with how to price this thing. So, Riley, without further ado, let's jump into it.
Let's jump right in.
Also, if you're watching Facebook, you already know the drill. Hashtag live down below in the comments. And then if you're watching on the replay, hashtag replay.
All right, Caleb, can you see my screen?
Yep. Bingo.
Okay. All right, so this is a huge subject. Like Caleb said, that we're seeing people ask us left and right. There's tons of threads on it. And a lot of times people are just saying, use a price tool. But that's only half a small part of the equation, really, is to utilizing a pricing tool. There's a very important factor that you need to get a huge understanding on in your market before you do that, which is your base rate. It doesn't matter if you're using Airbnb for your pricing, which they've done some improvements. A lot of people stay away from that. Or another dynamic pricing tool like PriceLab, which is what we use. It starts with your base rate. So what we're going to do today is we are going to do a little pricing. We've found a property that we believe we can have a good discussion about what the optimal price for a property would be. Obviously, like Caleb mentioned, every investor, every host has a different set of goals. Now, we are looking at this with a very specific lens as to optimizing the performance of this property. So strictly revenue. Now, it could be possible that these hosts are really not looking to get the best return on investment for this property. They're just trying to keep it rented for enough time to cover the bills or make sure that the property stays in good shape. So again, different goals are going to tailor your pricing strategy. We are looking at this trying to optimize the revenue for this property. All right, so here is the property that we found. Now, to talk a second, this is AirDNA that you're looking at. So this is another huge tool in the pricing game that you can utilize to check out the market as a whole. They have a ton of great statistics on each market, Charlotte specifically for us. And they have a ton of statistics on booking lead time, on average daily rates for properties of all different sizes. So very powerful tool you guys should be utilizing, and we'll show you today.
Yeah. So just to kind of touch on that, we have the paid version of Charlotte. Some of this might look a little different with AirDNA for the free version, but you can still utilize a lot of this.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So first, we're going to talk about our reference property. So when doing a comp analysis, which is essentially what we're going to do for the short-term rental side of things, we start with the reference property. So as you can see, it's a beautiful property. From this listing photo, you can see they're going to advertise that they have a beautiful outdoor area, some nice scenery, some nice landscaping. You can see a nice screened-in porch or three-season room here, and a large-size house. So let's just take a look through some of these photos and get some general information here. So as you can see, beautiful listing, beautiful property all around. So it's no secret that this property should be a slam dunk. It should do really well on the short-term side. Well furnished. You notice great photos of the place, bright and cheery, nice outdoor furnishing as well. Scroll down. A lot of photos of the outside. Some more photos of the outside. Even more photos of the outside. You can sense a theme there. So You can see there's a good amount of square footage in here. Here's a picture of the dining area here that you've got. They've got ample seating as well. So just getting some general information about the property that we're going to price. So obviously, you're doing this for your own property. You're going to be very familiar, intimately familiar with the statistics on your own home. So we're just going to catch up here. Nice large size TV in the entertainment room, nice couch. So as you can see, it's a quality listing. So I'm going to go back to the listing and get some general statistics here. It's a 4-bedroom and 3-bath property, which is important when doing a comp analysis. Right now, they are priced at $798 a night. Judging other 4-3 properties in the South Charlotte area, that seems a little high, but that's kind of a premonition here. We're going to go in and actually look at the numbers and make a determination.
So the goal here is what rallies and what we're going through is really how we kind of get to that rate, which we'll talk about at the very end. That base rate is really the goal, and what we're implementing in our pricing tool is base rate, and then essentially letting the algorithm figure out when to jack the price up, when to lower it, depending all on supply and demand. So you can manually do that if you want to, but we use a pricing tool, and we recommend even the self-managers use one as well.
That's right. Okay, so how are you going to find your comps? There's a few ways to do that. One of which we do, which is a paid tool, but is a little more in depth for the comps that you can find, is AirDNA. This is their Market Minder tool. And you can literally go through and see all the different short-term rentals. You can filter on the type of rental, the size, and take a look and get some good information about their the days that they've been rented in the last year, the ADR for the last year, the occupancy, and then the projected revenue for the property as well. So that's one good tool that you can use. Not everyone wants to pay for the tool, and that's fine. Another good way is to just go through Airbnb and act like a traveler. So I've put in, I'm looking for Charlotte for some specific dates, and then for 5 guests, obviously based on the occupancy of the property that you're listing, and then just go through, look and see what's available, and try and find properties that are similar. You can even get a little preview here. You can see information like the number of beds, number of baths, and a couple photos, so you can get pretty close to your property in terms of a comp set. So we've gone ahead and done that for you. We've got 2 properties here that we're going to review and then kind of relate back to our reference property. So here is the first one that we've got here. And as you can see, it's another beautiful listing. So this is another 4-bedroom. This is a 2-bath. So the difference being 1 bathroom for this property. And also likely as we go through the photos, you'll see probably a little bit of square footage. The other home is a little bit bigger, but in terms of furnishing and quality, they're, apples to apples. It's a good comparison in that way. So we've done that. We've scrolled through the photos here, but just to give you an idea what this looks like, got another beautiful listing. Bright and cheery photos, quality photos, nice furnishings in the property. So in terms of quality, it's definitely a good comparison. So now that we've got a good comp, we basically found a comp property that would work. What we need to do is try and figure out what their base price is. So sometimes you can see the base price here. It's always listed, but it can be misleading. So there are even some tools that will help you set what this is and almost set it lower so that when guests go to your listing, they see a nice low nightly rate, and then they go plug in their dates and realize that it's not really what they're actually selected for. So be careful using this number here. The better way to do it is to go down to their calendar and actually specify some dates to travel and see what the nightly rate turns out to be. So we're going to do that. You just click on your arrival and then your departure date. Notice it'll show you that they have a 2-night minimum, which is very important in the pricing game as well. And we see here that it's $269 per night for these selected dates. So we'll just go through and pick a few of these dates here and just get an idea of what that nightly rate is going to be. Okay, so here we see $325. These have both been weekdays, so we're going to try a weekend as well. Okay, $325 as well. So it looks like they're not utilizing a dynamic pricing tool. It looks like it's $325 across the board out a certain date. Obviously, as the dates come closer, as you can see here, it looks like they probably implemented a discount. But other than that, it's $325 across the board.
And typically, if everyone probably knows, but I'm just, typically a weekend is going to be more expensive than the weekdays, just because there's less days, less weekends. People usually travel on the weekends. So usually you should, rule of thumb is have higher price on the weekends and lower during the week.
That's right. It's a good point. And so you need to check both, check weekdays and check weekends when you're looking for the rates of these properties. So we see 325 across the board. So we've got a good idea what their base rate looks like. Now we need to relate that back to the reference property. When you're doing a comp analysis, you always want to take the rate for the comp and then adjust that to match the reference property. So what we talked about is that there's one less bathroom for this property, and there's also probably a difference in square footage for the property as well. So we would adjust this 325 nightly rate up because the reference property has more to offer in terms of bedrooms and square footage. So the adjusted rate, we'll call it, for the reference property, we're going to say is 375 based on the differences in those properties. All right, so now we've got another comp. We've got one, never base it off one. Honestly, the more data that you can collect is going to be really important. I mean, this is how you're going to make your money, your bread and butter here. So don't spare time here. Go for as many properties as you feel like fit. And then once you have an idea what you're looking for, you can tell if a property is going to be higher or lower really from just looking at it.
Yeah. And just to kind of touch on what Riley's saying, I think a lot of people would just want to get to the finish line as quick as possible. It's like, what do I need to price my place at? It's like, that's such a loaded question. There's so many factors. And I mean, we're shortening the curve down a ton in this live, but the more comps you look at, the more comfortable you are in the area, and really like looking at what your competitors are doing through the eyes of a traveler. That's really what this all boils down to. So yeah, go ahead, Riley.
And you're never done. You don't price it and forget it. And we'll touch on
Right.
that a little bit later, but you're never done pricing. This is an active concept that you need to be doing at least weekly. All right, so here's our other comp. As you can see, it is also 4 beds, 2.5 baths. So it's 1 half bath smaller than our reference property. It looks pretty similar in size of square footage of the home. And then we'll look through some of the photos so we can pick up some of the furnishings and some of the other amenities that are offered. It looks like maybe a little bit smaller in square footage as well. But another good looking property, an outdoor area, pretty well furnished as well. So yeah, we would say this would be a good comp to use. So the next step is we'll go down and try and find their base rate. So we'll go in and plug some dates here. I'm going to pick a weekday. And we're looking at 225. Okay, so it gives you an idea what the base rate is for the weekdays. Now let's take a weekend. One second here, guys.
That clear dates.
Yeah.
Right below the May calendar.
Yeah.
There we go. 2-night minimum once again.
Yep. So boom, 450. So wow, that's quite a difference between the weekday and the weekend rates. So for a property like this, you're gonna try and find the middle ground. What do you think a base rate would be in between those two numbers? And honestly, that's a pretty big gap. We would probably not have such a gap between the weekdays and the weekends. Obviously, there's going to be some, and it depends on your market and some other factors. But that's, in our opinion, a little bit too much of a difference there. So we would say finding somewhere in the middle of that gets you around the $400 range. So then we have to take that and we have to relate that base price back to our reference property. So again, like we said, a half bath smaller and a little bit smaller in square footage, and maybe a little bit, put this correctly here, a little bit better quality of furnishings, we'll say, in our reference property as well. So a couple factors, meaning that we need to hike that base rate up to get back to our reference property, which we put it at around 425 as our base rate back to our reference property here. So far we've done 2 comps. So we could go through comps all day, but the point being, we got to find a base rate for some of these other comps, and then we have to relate that back to our reference property. Now we have 2. We're at 375 for that first property and 425 for the second property. So that puts your base rate at around $400 a night for your base rate for the reference property. So, okay, that's a big step. We found our base rate, at least what we think it's going to be now. So the next step is, how do we implement that base rate? And there are a few ways to do that. Like we mentioned at the beginning, one of those is to utilize Airbnb. They work the same as a lot of dynamic pricing tools. They look for you to give them a base rate that they can then adjust based off various factors that we'll get into. So we're going to actually jump into Price Labs and give you a look under the hood here. So this is the Price Labs interface. And notice that you have your base rate right here. So this is one of our properties where we plugged in the base rate. And also you need to plug in the minimum rate as well, which just makes sure that when they adjust your rate for you, they don't go below what your threshold would be. And there's a couple reasons for implementing a minimum rate there. So why a pricing tool? Why is that going to be better than Airbnb? So Price Labs is a great tool. It's really cost effective. And when we start talking about the breadth of this software and how it can help you, the value just completely outweighs the cost. So when you plug in your base rate and they will recommend a rate for each of these days. And notice they even color code the different days. The darker blue is for a higher demand, and then the green into the yellows for lower demand. So it's a nice visual user interface that you can go through and quickly see when these high demand rates are set for. So how do they get these numbers? And it's obviously a complicated algorithm, but they take a bunch of factors into play here. So one being supply and demand, the number of properties that are currently available and the number that are booked, to see if there's a high demand weekend is one of the ways they do it. Seasonality is another big one, knowing that in Charlotte, this, late spring, summer, and early fall are the high seasons in Charlotte. And then when you get into late fall and the winter is when the rates will typically drop, obviously due to the demand. Weekday trends, they also take into consideration special events and holidays. A big event that we have in Charlotte is the Wells Fargo Golf Tournament. So obviously they are in tune with the big events and how that affects the travel industry in that market. And lastly, being the number of days left to book. This one is, we saw it a little bit earlier. This is such an important piece to a pricing strategy. If your nightly rate is the same for a day tomorrow and a day 3 months out, you're leaving revenue on the table. Set your rates higher, and then as they get closer to the day of booking, the rate should go down. That way, you're going to have a better chance of booking as it gets closer, but people who are booking more in advance, you're able to capture higher rates for those reservations. So that's a pretty good run through here. I want to show you a few other things, actually specifically to Price Labs. So if I hover on one of these dates, you've got a ton of information here. So the neighborhood occupancy, you've got seasonality, you've got a demand factor. It really gives you some of the bread and butter as to why the pricing and the demand has been set for this page as well. So if I don't like it, frankly, if I know something that I think they don't, about your market, about an event, or even you want to lower or increase the price, you can do that. You just highlight some dates and then you'll just make the price whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, this is such a valuable tool. Like, as we were going through it before this, we're like, should we show them the screen? Like, there's so much value on the screen. Like, what we're doing, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, you got last minute prices, you got so many more customizations on the left side of the screen right there. As you can tell, higher on the weekend, you can either manually do this, which we wouldn't recommend. That's another reason why a lot of people leave money on the table, or you could link up to something like this. I mean, what is this, like 20 bucks a month, maybe?
That's it.
I mean, not the amount of revenue that you will generate just by linking this up. And this works if you're working with VRBO, Airbnb, if you have both set up, it all communicates together.
Yep, it does. And a big part that we hit on earlier is it's not set it and forget it. This takes constant monitoring. And one of the best indicators that you have is what your booking lead time is. That's your indicator for how your pricing is doing. If people are booking you months out, your property's going hot and it's going early, guess what? You're leaving money on the table. You need to increase your pricing, and then your bookings will spread out a little bit. They'll get a little closer to when the check-ins are, but you'll be able to capture more revenue. And then if people are booking you It's the same conversely. So that's your indicator that you're looking at is your booking lead time.
Yeah. And we try to stay around 80 to 90% occupancy. If you're at 70, you could be priced too high. If you're at 100, you're definitely priced too low. So that's kind of our wiggle room with where we like to target that.
Yep, for sure. So the last thing, Caleb touched on it, but the customizations that are here, this is, again, a huge value add that's outside of just figuring out what the price for the night should be. So some things to mention there is, last minute discounts. So like we said, decreasing the price as the dates come up. Orphan days. How do you handle orphan days? If you don't know what that is, say I have a 5-night minimum stay requirement, and then I have 2 reservations that back up 2 nights from each other. So those are what we call orphan days. How do you want to handle those? If you're just utilizing Airbnb, then you're not going to be able to book those dates because it doesn't fit your minimum night stay requirement. But most of the time, or it depends on your strategy, you may want to try and book those dates. So you can set rules to how you would price those dates and how you would change the minimum night stay to accommodate those orphan days. So a ton of good features here. And honestly, it takes a good amount of time to sit down and work through all of them. So implement what you know. This is a long-term play here when you're making your pricing strategy. So don't throw 20 different factors in that you haven't fully researched how they're going to work together, because honestly, you're probably going to give away a big discount somewhere, or you're going to overcharge and you're going to lose some occupancy, or you're not going to get some reservations that you typically would have gotten. So that's it. I mean, I'm sure that was a ton. So Caleb will put this on YouTube. Honestly, pause it, rerun it. And then jump in there. All these tools, a lot of them will give you like free, trials on them as well. AirDNA has some free data in it as well. Jump in, and there's tons of articles out there that you can read on the tools themselves, pricing strategies. There's a lot of content out there. So the first step is getting started. So that's what you got to do.
Yep. And this is really to help you guys and girls. We also have a Price Labs referral link that we're going to drop in the comments. I think you get maybe $10 off. We obviously get a small commission as well, but it has helped us so much. So we only want to share the best tools with you guys to really optimize your short-term rental. Anything to add, Riley?
I don't. I've added a ton. It's a lot. Honestly, I'm tired just speaking it to y'all. So I get it.
That was a little longer. Thank you as always for watching. Once again, we will see you next week.